Cross comes in. White with the header. 1-0 England.
And here comes Whitehead. It's gold for Great Britain.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to Trek and Ball podcast with myself, Richard Whitehead.
And myself, Ellen White.
Ellen, who have we got on the show today?
Well, on today's podcast, we'd like to be joined by a double world champion, a two-time Olympic bronze medalist, and a YouTube blogger with over 850,000 subscribers. That's a lot, isn't it?
850,000?
That's what we're aspiring to be. That's in the near future for us. This person is a true advocate for the LGBTQ community who uses his voice to speak out and help others. He is a devoted husband and father, a keen baker, and someone we are really excited to talk to all about their achievements in the diving world, his life away from his sport, and a person behind the athlete. Today we are joined by Mr. Tom Daley. Hi, Tom.
Hello.
How's it going, mate? You all right?
I love that you got in there. I love baking as well. I love that.
I thought I'd just slide that in. You know, I watch a few of your videos, so...
Yeah, I'm obsessed with baking, watching Bake Off, and trying all things in the kitchen. So,
glad I found someone that likes Bake Off. Do you know, I speak to so many people that don't watch it, but I love it.
I love it. I'm obsessed.
I like extreme baking. I like when they do the massive cakes. I think that's giving my sugar rush.
Yeah,
something like that. Just go to the next level of baking.
Yeah.
Anyway, so you've talked about baking, but what was this about knitting, Tom? Come on,
it's my other obsession, and it's not just knitting now. It's crochet as well, and then I'm even thinking about trying to get in a sewing machine to see if it's weird because this lockdown has turned me into like a real crafter. I was on my way to a competition in Canada, and it was Lance, my husband, who said to me, we should get back into doing our mindfulness things or doing something that we can just escape from things because it's so hectic being a parent and an athlete and traveling and all that kind of stuff. So once Robbie's in bed, doing something that we can unwind with. And my husband said, why don't you just try and just start knitting squares just to do something to take. I was like, I don't know how to knit. That's going to be time consuming and boring. So anyway, I went and bought some yarn and some needles, and I downloaded a YouTube video to learn to knit on the flight on the way out there. And turns out lots of the divers knit, and the diving coaches, the Russian divers, one of the coaches actually from our team knits. So after all of those people that I spoke to, by the time I came home, I could do the basics, and then I just did loads of YouTube tutorials, and now I'm obsessed.
So you've now turned it into a competition.
Yeah, I know. Lance said that to me. He was like, why can't you just do something where you can just enjoy it, right, and not have to think about, but now for me, it's like, I can't wait to finish this, and I want to try this, and I want to learn this part of it. And I think it's just in an athlete's nature to take it to that competitive level every single time.
We know what everybody's getting for Christmas now then, right?
Yeah, exactly. I've been making hats, I've been making scarves.
So let's get into performance sport. You obviously won your first World Championships in 2009, age 15, and then again in 2017. What do you think it takes to be a world champion, and what do you think were your main attributes in winning in both 2009 and 2017?
It's really interesting because I was in two very different points in my diving career, 2009 and 2017. Yeah. In 2009, I'd done my first Olympics the year before, and my whole mentality and what my coach was drumming into me was, you're doing this for the experience right now. You don't think about winning, don't think about getting the medals. This is all about experience. 2012 and beyond is where you're going to be reaching your potential. So just take in as much experience as possible, learn from the good things, learn from the bad things. And I think that mentality was what I went into 2009 World Championships with, of all of these people are twice my age or up to twice my age, and I can just go and enjoy it, and I don't really have to think about it. And going in with that attitude just allowed me to let rip and just do it. And I think that was so without any expectation, without any pressure, I could just go and perform, and I won because the pressure got to everyone else. But then flip that completely on its head once you do win the World Championships, then all the pressure's on you, and to stay there is really, really difficult. And I mean, it took me 8 years to get back to winning a world title again. But the fact that I then in between that had the Olympic Games, which was I'm sure we'll talk about that in a minute, but that was a whole nother kind of pressure. And then 2016, I had the disappointment. happy to win a medal in the synchro, but then the individual didn't go how I wanted it to go. But then going into 2017, it was a completely different mentality. It's like I went in with a point to prove. And it was like, you know, I know how I thought 2016 should have gone for me. And it went the complete opposite. And I was like, you know what, 2017, I'm going to show you that actually it should have been me. And it should have been me that was doing the good stuff. And I remember in 2017, it was a completely different thing. In 2009, it was like, oh, let's do this for fun. In 2017, I woke up on that morning and I knew I was going to win. And it was the first time I've ever woken
feeling,
up when you just know. I was like, today's the day. And to be honest, I didn't feel great. I had like a sinus infection. And so like my ears were squeaking when I was hitting the water and all that kind of stuff. But I was like, no, today's the day. It's happening. And it was like that mental, to be honest, and lots of it in sport, especially with something that's like a skill sport like diving or gymnastics. It's all about the mental space you're in. All of the training is done weeks in advance. So it's just about where you are in that mental space.
And would you say consistency is part of your performance as well? We've recently had Greg Rutherford on the show, and he talked a lot about his success at games was all about his consistency, not only in competition but also in training. And then he took that into the competition, and then he kind of knew how it'd feel to do those long jumps. Is that the feeling that you get when you get on the board and you kind of know what kind of shapes that you'll make before your dive, and you know how you'll hit the water, etc.?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the more there's different phases of our training, like in any sport, and we have like the high volume phases, and then we like try and, you know, whittle it down a little bit towards competition to try and get the aim is to be able to train like you compete. So in training, get consistently like high scoring dives and not really have any big wobbles, because with the big wobbles in competition is exactly what you want to try and avoid. You get one chance, and the fact that every 4 years you get that like opportunity to just have like one chance, or 5 years now, but that is the high pressure of it. So if you can be consistent in training, it just gives you that confidence knowing that going into competition, you know what kind of form you're in. But also I've been in competitions before where I've way outperformed how I've been training. So like, for example, if I've had an injury for like a couple of weeks leading up to it and I haven't had the best training going into it, but I know that I've had the training before that to be able to like back me up a little bit, if that makes sense. So the consistency comes into it a lot, but I do think once you're on the diving board, it's, you know, 85% a mental game.
And like, order to be successful, win things, you've got to be surrounded by the right people to enable you to thrive. Like, who is part of Team Tom, and how do you like assemble your team? Like, what does it take?
Oh gosh, it's, you know, there's like, there's a whole, it's like a village, if you like. My husband is a massive support for me because with our son, obviously I'm away traveling and competing. So my husband is on his own with Robbie quite a lot when I go traveling. My mum does come up and help as well at the back ends of the week. So so that home team is like so important for me to be able to go away and feel, you know, because any parent that goes away and leaves, like, you always feel guilty because you're like, oh, I feel like I should be at home, but I also have to like work and do my job. Like there is always that, but knowing that he's at home with Lance and my mum, that really, I don't know, it makes me feel a little bit better. But I will talk about that a little bit later about how that's all changed my perspective on everything. But in terms of my team, my coach, Jane, has been my coach since 2013, because in 2012, afterwards, you go from that massive high, and I had like a massive low, like a couple of months later, and I just couldn't feel like I could get myself out of it. So I decided to make a massive change. I moved to London, I changed coach. I just shook everything up. So that in turn changed my strength and conditioning coach. It changed my nutrition. It changed my physio. It changed pretty much every part of my team, really. And to be honest, one thing that I think has been really good is that my team is 90% women. And I think for me, that made a massive I don't know how, I can't quite explain how, but it changed. It made me go from an athlete that was plodding along to a professional athlete. And I feel like it was only after 2012 when I moved and I experienced what a professional athlete day in, day out needs to do and needs to go above and beyond, that I felt like I started to get those progressions. And it was, my nutritionist helped me massively. My coach obviously changed so many things in my technique. Also my psychologist, all of those kinds of things have helped me become the athlete that I am today.
I was actually going to say, what kind of lessons have you learned on the way? Because, from this podcast, we always want people to, whoever's listening, to have like takeaways. So is there like lessons that you've learned on the way in like building your team, changing your team, developing your team, and you yourself as well?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's about never settle for second best. If something is not right, and if your gut tells you that there could be something better, or there could be someone better, or there could be never just let it go by. Have the conversations, have those uncomfortable conversations, because if you have those uncomfortable conversations earlier, it saves all of the headache of like, oh, now it's gone too far, now I can't say anything. And just being able to have that regular communication, to set boundaries and to set your expectations of where you want to go and how you want to get there. And for me, it's about letting everyone know what my attitude going into an Olympic year is. I am going to do every single thing possible, make every sacrifice, and do anything and everything possible so that when I stand on the diving board at the Olympic Games, I know I've done everything that I physically can, like mentally could, absolutely everything. So I know that I have the best shot at doing my best. And the team that surrounds me, I want them to have that same attitude and that same mentality. And my coach definitely does. And all my team around me does. And I think that surrounding yourself with people that are, have the same attitude and the same mentality as you really helps. Because if you have someone that is slightly half-assing it, then you're only ever going to be as good as your weakest person in your team. So, we need everyone to use their whole ass and not their half ass.
I remember meeting Jane in 2000. I think it was 2013 when I was obviously on Splashing.
Yes.
She seemed to be like a mentor as well, and she seemed to be guiding you through your career. And I know when obviously we chatted on that show, and we chatted about influences in your life, and obviously sadly you lost your dad on the journey to 2012. How did his support then manifest in how you are as a father and as a husband now? It must have been obviously a really tough time for you, but I know that now as a husband and as a dad, I think that resonates in who you are, doesn't it?
Massively. I mean, there were times when my dad would do things that I would find extremely embarrassing. He would cry after.
Yeah, obviously like what you do, mate. Like those TikTok videos.
Exactly. But, he would cry after competitions, and I'd be like, "Oh, Dad, it's so embarrassing. I can't believe you're doing this." But now being a parent, I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I can't even imagine Robbie ever doing anything and all of the effort that my dad had to go through in terms of taking me to training every day, organizing my training stuff, taking me to competitions, traveling and watching me here, there, and everywhere." All of that, he was doing so much for me. Yeah. And it's not until you become a parent that you realize that. And that's kind of when I was saying earlier, that perspective of becoming a parent and realizing that little human being is the most important thing in your whole world. And being able to have that perspective, it's allowed me to enjoy diving again, because I can go to diving and be like, this is just a game. It's a damn important one for me, but it's just a game, and I'm going to enjoy it. And just, I'm not going to be able to do this forever. So why not just make the most of it, enjoy it, do what you need to do. And sometimes that perspective, since having that perspective, has just allowed me to compete so much better. I don't worry about how the competition's going to go. I just execute. I just go do it, rather than thinking, oh, what if this happens? What are people going to think? And, you know, at the end of the day, I'm going to come home to Robbie and he's going to be there, you know, one in a cuddle, and he's not even going to care whether I've done well or if I've done bad. But it's more about, you know, I guess showing him an example of like, you can work hard for anything and you can achieve it.
Oh, definitely. And, you know, what was like your mindset going into like London 2012, for instance, like, especially, you know, you just spoken about, you know, the influence your dad had and his influence, like what was your mindset going into that games?
Yeah, it was such a whirlwind of a time. I mean, I remember going into it, it was all the hype and all of the expectation and all of the pressure because, you know, it was London 2012. Everyone in the UK was talking about the Olympics coming up. And, you know, I would see people in the streets that would be like, oh, you're going to go bring home a medal for us. And, you know, thinking it was going to be as easy as turning up, doing my dives and coming home with a medal. And there was an unbelievable amount of pressure. Even going into the last day, diving hadn't won a medal yet. And our performance director said, Tom, we need to win a medal. If we don't win a medal, we lose our funding. And I was like, oh, that's really helpful.
Yeah, wow.
This competition. But I remember putting like the prelim didn't go exactly how I wanted it to go. It was like a pretty disastrous prelim. I mean, I made it through comfortably, but then the semi-final again wasn't that great. And it wasn't until I was walking out for the final and I saw like there's 18,000 people cheering in the crowd, and I saw like my family, my mum and my brothers at one end of the diving pool, like screaming. And I was like, this is the moment that I've dreamed of since I drew a picture in a book when I was 9 years old, with like saying London 2012, that I was going to be in the Olympics. And why am I so nervous? Why am I putting so much pressure on myself? This is a moment that I thought I was going to want more than anything, enjoy more than anything. And I was like, you know what? Yeah, let's have some fun here. Let's forget about, you know, the fact that this is the Olympics. This is what I've dreamed of my whole life. Why torture myself through the whole experience? Why not just enjoy it? And I think when I get to that stage of being able to enjoy competition, that's when I perform my best.
And it was such a great stage as well. I've been lucky enough to obviously go into that pool and see that and go off the boards as well. And it's one of the best kind of venues that I've ever been at. And you're like in a spaceship. You get on that 10-meter board, and apart from pooing your pants, you look out and you go, "This is incredible." And I think as a platform for success, everybody looks for that platform to show the world who they are. And I think you definitely did. What age were you at that stage of your career?
In 2012, I was 18. So yeah, it was
such a massive amount of pressure, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Such a massive amount of pressure. And at that stage as well, you'd already done your synchronized dive, right?
Yes, in 2012, yeah.
And I know that at that stage as well, you did receive quite a lot of abuse online because of, and I wasn't aware of the kind of abuse and the trolling you can get from social media probably until 2012. So the positive thing when people get behind you, but also the negative side. How did that then affect you going forwards into the games towards your main event?
You know, it's interesting because I kind of couldn't believe like how people could say things that I struggle to imagine someone ever saying that to someone's face, or like like the things that you hear on social media, saying it to someone's face. So for me, it was like a wake-up call to be like, why am I even giving any of these people any of this attention? Why am like, don't even bother ever replying. I don't even block people that say horrible things anymore, because then it makes them think, oh, well, he saw it and he blocked me. Like it was, so I don't even give anyone the time of day, to be honest. You know, I scan through comments. I don't really take them to heart, good or bad, because you know, I feel like social media can be a very dangerous place. You can, if you are only flooded with great comments, or if you're flooded with bad comments, you know, the negative comments can make you feel bad about yourself. The positive comments can, you know, do the opposite. And I think that's not good either way. It's not great for you. And I think for me, I just use social media as a platform to let people know what I'm doing, how I'm feeling. And I don't really care so much about how the numbers are growing, or if they're shrinking, or if they've got enough likes. Like, I don't care about any of that stuff, because to me, none of that is important.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, I think that's a great mindset to have, because it can be really challenging. It can affect performances. It can affect you kind of mentally as well, your mental health as well. So I think that's
Absolutely.
a really great mindset. So in your individual event, I hope I'm getting this right. So you did a difficulty of 3.3, is that right, for your final dive?
Yes.
And then your other two fellow competitors had 3.6.
Yes.
Is there? I don't want to be naive, but is your dive like set in stone? Do you ever have a conversation with your coach about changing your dive, through the competition, or is it just set, like the structure?
You have to put your dive sheet in 24 hours before.
Yeah.
So, and then they're set.
Yeah.
So throughout the competition, I had the same degree of difficulty. I just did them in a slightly different order, because that dive at the end is my most consistent dive. I can know that I can perform that dive under pressure and get, close to 100 points, 95 plus most of the time. Yeah. So given any normal circumstance, it would have been enough. But the other two managed to do their dive like incredibly well, which was an amazing competition to actually be a part of. But also, funnily enough, the year after, they increased that dive's difficulty that I did by 0.1 the year after, which wasn't helpful at the time. But, so it's one of those things that throughout the whole 6 dives, that's where all of the 6 dives are important. You can mess up any of the dives throughout, and you can have the degree of, I open up with quite a high degree of difficulty and then get gradually lower. And so now I have kind of changed my tactic a little bit, where I open up with the dive that I finished on in London 2012, I now start with. Right. And I also, the next dive I do is also a lower degree of difficulty. And then I have all of my difficult dives at the back end of the competition. So that's good in a way that I have lots of difficulty to get more points, but also it's at the time of competition where you feel most tired. So there is a risk to doing it like that, but it gives me the best chance to still be in contention. Even if I'm like 5-10 points behind, I know that I can still beat people with the degree of difficulty I have at the end.
What was that feeling like when you knew you got the bronze medal?
I mean,
when I knew you threw yourself into the pool, I saw that.
Yes, well, there was that. When I knew I had done enough to get a medal, because if I landed vertical, that it was going to be enough for a medal. And I remember hitting the water and thinking, like, I felt like I could have done like a dolphin out of the water, like flick me up in the air, and I could have done that. But I just remember just thinking, like, oh my goodness, I've done it. Like all of this work, all of this like time, this effort, all the sacrifices, all the hardships, it was it was worth it. I'm going to come away with an Olympic medal around my neck. And, at a certain point, yes, of course, everybody wishes for a gold one, but when you just know that you're getting an Olympic medal, it's just something special that you dream of from such a young age. And it's interesting because you ask Olympians and Paralympians, like, would you rather win a world championship gold or just win any Olympic medal? And there's just something that's so prestigious about an Olympic medal, Paralympic medal, that is very, I don't know, it just supersedes any other achievement.
And when you're stood up on that 10-meter board, like what are you actually thinking about? Like, have you got a process that you go through as you're walking up the steps and then you get to the board?
Yeah,
let me tell you what I thought about when I was on the 10-meter board. Please live.
Yeah, please don't help me. It's interesting because it depends what I'm in training. It's quite different to competition, but really I do lots of visualization before I go up the stairs and things like that, and like physical run throughs. But when I'm on the board, I actually just focus on my breathing, because if I'm able to like just get to a point where I'm kind of calm, but I've got enough adrenaline that I know that I'm going to do a dive well. It's just about bringing yourself back to the present moment, not getting ahead of yourself thinking, oh, what if this happens, or how I need to land this way, or I need to do this, because there's so many things that happen before you get to that point. So you just have to try and stay as present as possible.
What kind of things added pressure to you at London? Do you think being like a poster boy, I remember seeing lots of pictures of you in your Speedos, Adidas trunks, all over the place. Was that an added pressure going into the games, or was that just a platform then to just get your story out there? And
it's
and
interesting
make a
because
future
I
for
just,
yourself.
like, again, leading into it, I just didn't think about it. I still never read any news articles. I don't watch anything back. Like, I hate to say it, but I probably won't listen to this back because I just don't like listening. Like, I don't like listening to myself talk about my diving career. I don't like seeing what people have written about me, and I don't like seeing what people have filmed of me. Like, I will watch back competitions to analyze it from a performance point of view, but other than that, I just don't. It's.
What's the funniest thing that's been written about you?
I have no idea. To be honest. I mean, I still find it funny that there's like been news articles written about the fact that I knit and crochet. That's me. Like, if you had told me that this time last year that I was going to be like obsessed with knitting and crochet, I would have been like, "What are you talking about? What is that?" Yeah.
This is a question for Rich, because I've read something about you, Tom, about the aftermath of kind of 2012. But like, are there any moments and feelings, after a major competition where you've Paralympics that you felt like quitting or not wanting to continue running?
Yeah, after a major games, especially after you've been successful, you kind of get really flat, and the adrenaline goes, the kind of aurora of the games and being in the village with all your mates kind of disappears, and then you kind of come home, and yes, it's great to be back home with your family and friends, but then all of that goes, and it's trying to then replicate that is really hard. Do you have the same kind of feeling when you come back from?
Absolutely. Like, after 2012, I really struggled, and it was interesting because obviously I'd always dreamed of winning an Olympic medal, and I thought that was what I wanted in my whole life. That's all I wanted, and I was just thinking about London 2012, and I didn't think beyond that at all. So once that was all over, I found myself like really in like a hole, like a post-Olympic blues kind of thing, and I was like, how can I be like upset and mad and like not happy about the fact that I'm an Olympic medalist? And then who do I talk to that would even understand the fact that, I can't talk to any of my teammates because they didn't win an Olympic medal, and I'm going to say, I feel really like rubbish about how I'm like, and diving, and they would be like, shut up, you just won an Olympic medal. Like, what are you talking about? I would have given, anything to be able to do that. And it's like, just, so then you're like stuck in a hole of not being able to have anyone around you that understands. So I was like going, like, my diving career was like, I was like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. I need to like get away. I can't do it. So to the point where like I stopped for a little bit and was like, okay, maybe I need to start looking into something else that I'm going to do. And I started doing more TV stuff. And I went to, and that was when I went to LA to do some stuff for Nickelodeon. And that's when I met my now husband. And it was the first time that I'd met someone that understood how, like, what I was feeling at that time. Because he had won an Oscar at a young age. And after winning an Oscar, again, in his field, if you tell someone that you're feeling really crappy after you've just won an Oscar, they're like, what are you talking about? You've won an Oscar. Like, over the moon with this. And he understood how I was feeling at that time. And then, we'd both lost people that were really close to us, and like we just connected on a completely different level. And that really, for me, felt like it rebooted my diving career because I felt like I wasn't alone.
Yeah, you do. And I think at that time as well, you need to be around like-minded people that can obviously empathize around you at this scenario. Did you think that gave you added confidence talking about those issues that were really close to your heart?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and I think the fact that I lost my dad in 2011, and obviously I was thinking about the Olympics, and I was just so tunnel vision. I never gave myself a chance to grieve, or never gave myself a chance to stop, talk about it, think about it, because I knew that it wasn't going to be helpful, because I knew I had to get to the Olympics and I knew I had to perform well. So it wasn't until like I was able to talk to someone that might understand that I was like, oh, like I've really kept this locked away, and I've really not, had a chance to deal with it. So I think that in itself as well was something that was able to like, I felt like I was being pinned down, but like you do have to grieve and you do have to talk about it in order to be able to feel
and
like...
it gives you that platform, doesn't it? And especially you talked a lot about homophobia, and I know that the Commonwealth, some of the Commonwealth countries were obviously their stance on that. You've been very vocal on that, and that's something that I know you're really passionate about. And actually, I've got a message from somebody that says, how does an athlete with all the structure and mental toughness of an elite athlete deal with a freaking filmmaker husband who is paid to be an emotional madman who thrives on discoveries pulled from chaos? And this is from somebody called Dustin Lance Black. Do you know that person?
I don't know him, no. Yeah, he definitely is crazy, and he definitely is up and down emotionally. Let's put it that way. I mean, that's the interesting thing, though, is we are so opposite in that sense. Like, you know, athletes are so, well, most of the time I find that we're very like, we're going to wake up at this time. This is the routine. This is the structure that I need. We're going to do this, this, and this, and like to have a plan and know where we're going. Whereas Lance is very much a creative, likes to go with the flow, feels things like in a different way because he has to be able to emote that and put it onto paper and all that kind of stuff. So we are very different in that sense. And I guess that's where like opposites attract, and we'll be able to balance each other out in that way. But you know, it's also good to, I mean, Lance knows that it can be a challenge sometimes, and he finds
you've got some work to do at home as well, because he's been looking after your Robbie.
Yeah, I know. And I'm always like, okay, Lance will say, oh, okay, I need to go to the gym today and do a workout. Even an example this morning, like bearing in mind it was an hour, and Lance was going to go and run a 5K, and it was an hour and a half before this call. And I said, oh, Lance, remember I've got a call at 11. He was like, oh, well, I'm not going to be able to run today then. No, you go for your run. You've got an hour and a half. You should do it in at least 30 minutes. Get out there now. And he's like, oh, no, I won't have enough time. And I was like, don't go making excuses now. And then I like holding him accountable for his workout goals, that's for sure. And which I'm sure he doesn't really appreciate, but kind of does, maybe.
Let's talk about Splash, mate. Let's talk about Splash. So
come up the stairs now. He's talking about me. There he is.
That was a damn exaggeration. I did that 5K in 2.5 minutes flat. On this to your watch.
Brilliant.
It's like an accurate watch.
Yeah.
That is brilliant. So Splash wise, right, all I want to know is who was your favourite contestant and who was useless. That's all I want to know.
You were the best. You were the best. Like, come on. Like, you were the only one who did like managed to do a handstand and like was just like, yeah, I'm going to do it. Like the first time, we were like, yeah, go for it. And it was really interesting to see actually who you would think would be a really good diver and who actually was. Because sometimes people would surprise, like for people that had dance backgrounds or gymnastic backgrounds or sporting backgrounds, of course, you're going to have some awareness of your body to be able to do it. But because diving is something that comes so natural to me, like in terms of, I don't have to think about falling off the board and landing on my head or whatever. But it was interesting to actually see how difficult it actually is for people to learn from scratch. Because there's one thing having awareness of your body when you're like standing on the ground, but when you're up on, 10 meters high, even 3 meters high, and, you've got to be aware of your body in the air, because once you've taken off, there's not really that much that you can do there's little bits and bobs here and there that you can do to slow yourself down, but there isn't really much. So it was really interesting for me to watch how people dealt with fear. Some people were really terrified about it. Some people were like, you know what, I'm just going to go for it. I don't care. So that was the interesting.
I had nightmares about a blooming 10-meter boarder. Seriously, I had nightmares. Yeah. But then that didn't help from the day before seeing Gemma Collins jump in.
Yeah, no, I remember on the live show she had these big bruises just like from where she was smacking the water. But yeah, she was quite the character on Splash, bless her.
I'm still waiting for Rich to show me some videos of him diving, actually. Speedos and everything. I'm waiting for it, Rich.
Yeah, you don't want to see those, mate. They were very tight.
They came up with quite some costumes, didn't they?
Yeah, they were very revealing. Mine were too tight. I kept telling them, look, I need them a bit looser.
That's the thing. It's like what is for us divers. We can't. The reason we wear things that are so tight is because you don't need anything out of place, and you don't need anything in a.
You don't need any accidents, right?
Yeah, 35 miles an hour and something out of place is not so comfortable.
Becky Aglington was talking. We spoke to her, and she said that literally she's dived in once, and then just her boobs just popped out, and like she's like so thankful that they're not filming under her lane. Like, yeah, I can't
they are those swimsuits that they wear, the swimmers. Oh my gosh, they are incredibly tight because they have to try and be as aerodynamic, or I guess not aerodynamic because they're in the water, but hydrodynamic, I guess is the word. But they have to be like as streamlined as possible. So it is really interesting to see that.
Nothing like that's happened to you then, Tom, has it? You're not lost your shorts or anything?
Yes, like forgetting to tie my trunks up, and I've been in competition before where they've come around my ankles, and it's been up on the big screen where like they felt luckily from the back, you just see my backside on the screen, and I'm like pull up my trunks. I mean, yeah, so I definitely remember to do my trunks up from now on.
Is it true that the British swimming chief executive kind of based on Splash said that you'd risk winning Olympic gold in the future if you were to take part in it?
Oh yeah, was it David Sparks at the time, I believe?
Yeah.
I mean, it's put it this way, British, they've never been quite on my side about anything, put it that way. So it's I'm all here and happy to do everything for the young kids and all that kind of stuff, but they've definitely not been one of my supporters, put it that way.
And did that affect your relationship with them moving forward as well? Was that?
Oh yeah. It continues to be a problem, and I think it happens with lots of their athletes.
Sure.
I don't think often they don't understand what it is to be an athlete and how much we have to sacrifice and what our families put into it, and they don't treat people's families as people that are crucial to us being able to do what we do. So they've never quite understood that, I don't think.
No, I definitely agree with that. And then obviously you from doing like Splash, and you're now into the cycle going into Rio. How was that cycle different for you? Was there any real changes with your training, etc.?
I think the biggest change was my coach. So my training schedule changed, my intensity changed, like just loads of things were changing. And I was also like kind of became the athlete that I am now in terms of like my understanding of nutrition, of strength and conditioning, also just the understanding of like mentally what space I needed to be in, also like my technique, and also like I ended up finishing growing kind of thing. So between 18 and 22 was kind of like the time where you stop growing and you start to develop the body that you're going to have as an adult, because obviously when you're 18 you're still kind of growing, still kind of developing. So that I think made me a lot stronger to be able to finish my dives a lot better.
And you competed in the men's synchro, won bronze with Dan Goodfellow. Do you think the work you both put in, like moving into the games, like the consistent performances, like really kind of helped you both kind of get that medal?
Oh, massively, because every competition that we did in 2016, we came away with a medal. So it was a very consistent year for us. Our scores were always good, and I think that helped a lot. And then also 6 weeks before we left for the games, Dan moved in with me as well. So like we were able to train together, we lived together, and we just tried to do everything so that we could get the best performance possible. And thankfully, I mean, it was a close one, but we did. So we were pretty happy with that.
It must be important to have a real close relationship with your sync partner then at that point. And talk to us about how that comes about. Is it something that you kind of choose, or is it your coach? How do you get a partner, and then what kind of attributes make a good synchro partner?
Yeah, it's a bit of everything, really. There's lots of things that influence it, but it comes down to you have to be able to do the same dives. So currently in the UK, there's only 2 people that I would have a choice of doing synchro with, and right now my synchro partner is a guy called Matty Lee, and he moved down from Leeds to London to train with me full time 2 years ago now. And basically to be able to do the same dives, kind of have a similar technique. And because if you have a similar technique, to be able to stand next to each other and go 1, 2, 3, go, you don't really have to think about much else other than that. Obviously, at the beginning, there's some little timing tweaks and things like that. But once you're in the air, you've got to do your own dive. So if the two of you are next to each other and you kind of look similar and you kind of have a similar technique, it makes it so much easier for then the judges to be like, oh, they look like two people doing the same dive. Whereas even with Dan, although we were very successful, we did have a similar technique at the start, but then Dan was a lot smaller than I was and he span a lot faster than I did. So the spin speeds were often a little bit off, but as long as we came in vertical and we were the same distance from the board, it would the judges would still go with us. But now with Matty, my spin speeds are the same as his, so our synchro scores tend to be slightly higher.
Do you know what I just remembered, Ellen? Is that when I used to be a swimmer, Tom, and I swam at Crystal Palace, and I met Jason Statham when he was a diver.
Yes, because he used to dive. He used to dive at Crystal Palace.
Yeah, I've just remembered just when you were talking. Then I went, I need to mention that. Yeah, and my first, so I can't remember who his partner was at that point, but then they invited us to do a couple of dives, and I think I went off the 3-meter board and just like belly flopped in. I think, and
yeah, he's very. I think he dived at the Commonwealth Games as well. I can't remember which ones. I believe they were in Malaysia, but like a long time ago. But yeah,
Jason Statham, mate.
Thanks for a little insight there.
Diver out of all the
That's it. He's done all right since, hasn't he? He's done all right.
Yeah, he's done all right, I guess.
Obviously, we're living in some strange times at the moment, and Tokyo's kind of, moved. It's getting closer now, obviously. What are your aspirations for obviously Tokyo? Like, is it the gold medal? Like, how is your training going at the moment in preparation for obviously the games?
I think this year, it feels to me like a bonus year because it's a year that we weren't meant to have as an Olympic year. We never get the chance to restart an Olympic year. And I think going into the year that would have been an Olympic year, I started it with a broken hand. I started it, so I was already on the back foot. Like I wasn't like the things that were happening. I had lots of things that I could have learned from in order to be able to have the best year. So I do think of it as like a bonus of like have a restart. And that for me, I think is, I think everyone can take it as they will, but I think everybody can learn from what they were doing. If they were doing good, keep going. If they weren't, change it. But going into that competition, like I said before, I'm going to give everything I've got this year. I don't have an outcome target because I know that I will be happy if I get to the Olympics and I've done everything that I can. If I've done everything that I can, I know that I'm just going to go there and dive, enjoy it, and just, obviously I'm going to give it my best shot. But, the proudest achievement I'll have is the fact that my husband and my son will be there watching. And awesome. I think that perspective will give me the chance to actually just enjoy it and dive like I did back in 2009 when I won the World Championships without worrying, without care, and just being able to have fun.
And is your target in diving still top of the podium? Is that still? I'm not talking obviously just about Tokyo because I don't want to put pressure on you like that. But just generally, is that the... I think injuries is going to be the one thing that I have to try and avoid as an older athlete now, and I think just being able to I think, of course, I want to be the best in the world. I think, any athlete that goes into a competition saying that they want otherwise is lying. Of course, you want to be the best that you can be. So, and I think, but with that comes the preparation and the fact that I've just got to go in there and give it my best shot. So, but yes, that's always the goal. And what would you like to be remembered for? Do you know Tom Daley, he's now retired as an athlete, and lots of sportsmen and women and the general members of the public have followed your career. When I spoke about this in the past, it's been more about me and not the sport. What would you like your legacy to be?
I'd like to think that people, especially young people that are growing up, if they feel slightly different to their peers, if they feel like they're an outsider and they feel like they're less than all the people around them and they don't quite fit in, if you feel like a little bit of a misfit, that you still can be the best that you can be at anything you choose to do.
Yeah.
And, you know, because for me, I always felt like I didn't ever quite fit in, and I was always slightly different, and I couldn't quite figure out why until obviously later on in my life. But I think being able to be the figure of someone that, you know, even if you feel like you don't fit in, there is a place for you, there is a family for you, and there are people that will support you, and you will be able to achieve your wildest dreams if you just dream the impossible.
Awesome. Well,
That's
we're going to
amazing,
finish
yeah.
off like we do with all the podcasts. So we have 10 quick questions, Tom.
Great.
Quick fire questions to
Okay,
finish.
I'm ready.
Okay. Do you want to do the first one, Els?
Okay, so it's track or ball.
Track. I can't catch or throw.
Okay.
What's the greatest accomplishment in your life?
Becoming a parent.
Do you believe in ghosts?
No.
Okay.
And what's the biggest risk you've taken?
Learning a new dive a year before the Olympics.
Wow. Okay. Can you sing?
No.
No.
That's an easy one.
But karaoke, if you're
Oh,
getting
I'm
up
always
there,
up for karaoke. I'm
Okay,
always
what-
up for karaoke.
what would be your song?
Gosh, that's a good one. Oh, you know, Estelle, American Boy. I always used to sing that. I always sing that
Yeah.
with my friend Sophie.
How does that go, Tom? How does that
Oh,
go?
we ain't going there. I have to have at least 3 margaritas before we get to that. Maybe after the Olympics.
When are you the happiest?
When I'm at home eating at the table after something we've baked with my husband and Robbie.
The silliest thing you've ever got upset about?
Oh gosh. I mean, at the time it didn't feel silly, but now looking back at it, it's silly. When I was younger, I did a competition where my legs buckled, I fell off the board and I landed like on my bum, failed a dive, and then I came out of the pool crying and screaming, and I think I nearly pushed one of the other divers in just because they were like in my path, where I bolted to the fire exit door and ran outside.
Is that on YouTube? No.
Aw.
No, unfortunately, that's not on YouTube. I think it was before the days of like accessible video cameras back in like 2002 or something. I don't know.
Where do you see yourself in 10 years' time?
Oh, I'd love to have like a fitness studio near a beach somewhere and be a fitness instructor during the day and like a crochet designer by night.
That sounds amazing. That does.
Yeah.
How would your friends describe you?
Oh gosh, depends which ones you ask, to be honest. I think they would say I was quite weird. I think they would say I was like the organizer. So like I'm the one who, like, if something's going to happen, I probably would have to be the one to organize it. So I guess you could say a leader, a weird leader that is always eating.
And last but not least, what's your greatest fear?
Oh, greatest fear. That's a good one. And that's a tough one. I'd like to think I wasn't scared of anything, but that's very not true. I mean, to be honest, I would have to say my greatest fear is diving. I still to this day find it terrifying. And I think if you ask most divers, when you're standing on the end of the board, it is a very terrifying, no matter how many times you do it, you always know the risks. And I think that for me is always it's part of the reason why I love it, because I like scary movies and I like the adrenaline rush of things. I love roller coasters. So the things that scare me the most are the things that I always want to try and confront. So diving, I would say, was a thing I'd be fearful of most. And confrontation. I'm not very good at confrontation.
Awesome. Thank you for your time, Tom. You've been a great guest, very informative and very open. Really appreciate your time.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Tom.
So I don't know about you, Ellen, but I'm going to do things from now on full-arsed, not half-arsed.
Is that your new motto in life?
I think it might be. What an inspiring chat with Tom. He's a nice guy, isn't he? And he's very relatable to performance sport, but also those listeners and viewers that maybe have got that change in their life, whether it's being a new dad or getting married, and how that has an impact on sport.
Yeah, definitely. I think he was talking about how more settled he felt, and also being surrounded by the right people. I think that was a really nice thing that he spoke about, was his coach, obviously his husband, his support network, his family, having those conversations and almost everyone on the same page, I think is so important with the people that you are surrounded by. I'm sure you're the same with the people that you're surrounded by as well.
And the team is as important as the individual. And from an individual event such as his platform dive to then his synchro, it was very interesting about the different mindsets and his partner living with him to try and get that fluidity around the thought process. Some real key messages around communication and tolerance as well, having to tolerate somebody else, like his partner moving in with his husband and Tom. I wonder what that was like.
Must have been very interesting, yeah. And I think there's so many takeaways. We've spoken to so many guests, but again with Tom, so many things that young athletes, people coming through in the diving world, or just athletes in general, or people that are doing recreational sport as well, will really, take away some really amazing things that he spoke about. And, a lot resonated with us as well. And every guest that we have on, I feel like we come away and we're like, wow, like, I want to do this. Maybe I'll change something about the way I train. Yeah, definitely.
So everybody remember to subscribe, and we really want your feedback. This is your podcast. We've had some great guests up to now. Any feedback regarding who you want on your show, please get in touch. Ronnie O'Sullivan, Greg Rutherford, Becky Adlington have been our guests up to now, and we've got some really exciting people coming up as well, haven't we, Ellen?
Oh yeah, definitely. Make sure you check it out. Definitely subscribe, and also socials at Track and Ball Pod. So thanks again for all your support, and we'll see you soon.
Cross comes in. White with the header. 1-0 England.
And here comes Whitehead. It's gold for Great Britain.